But one of the things I thought was interesting about what you said, Dow, I think you needed to take the question a little bit deeper with young people, because young people are intelligent enough to understand what the issues and problems are within their community, and I agree with you on that. The question has to be, when we identify what those issues are, what do we do about it? That's the next step, because the engine of any movement are young people. So that you motivated them, you open their mind to the issues and problems in their community. Now what's the next step? How do they get involved? What can they do to make a president or a Congress address their particular issues, or make a council person or a mayor address their particular issues?
Well, you have to back up a second and go into what are the adults telling them that's important. Mm-hmm. So often with my students, I'm the first person to bring this stuff up to them.
Right.
So they've never ever talked about this stuff. They don't watch documentaries. They don't really know any of the facts. They kind of just go off of emotional response.
Right.
And so, but they start to wake up. But so to ask the idea of what should we expect? Because to me that kind of goes back to that point of what should we expect. I don't care, black president, any president.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Instead of worrying, because the question, I feel like everything's been wrapped around what's good or bad for President Obama versus the idea of what's good or bad for the working class in general, our community in specific. So then my question would be...
So the thing is, the accountability issue is what we're talking about here, and what we should be doing is we're saying is not anything unrealistic. The same accountability issues that we would have had with President Bush are the same issues we would have with President Obama.
I don't care.
Regardless of whatever color he is.
I don't care whether they melanin or albinos, or whether they got ovaries or testicles. I'm just saying the idea that there's the needs of the black community, the needs of working class people have not changed, and
poor people.
But yet the voices have gone out.
Right.
More than ever. So
you said something that was interesting, because I want to come back to that, because we talked about this on the show. You didn't hear about the working class people in this particular election. You heard about you didn't hear about the poor people, and there was only one person that, in the primaries that was talking about that until he got shut down, and then they forgot about everyone else. Yet the majority of these working class people, the majority of these poor people, supported this particular president, and we have a right as citizens that once we cast our vote to have some type of expectation of that, a response to our particular needs. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is called playing the game. That's what politics are about. Hispanics talked about, they wanted, this DREAM Act. They wanted the issue of immigration to be done. To talk about, I'm doing something general and it's going to help everybody is not the answer. I wrote a piece talking about black people, for example, using the analogy that black people have cancer, and then we're being told to take an aspirin. The cancer has a specific issue within our body, and it needs to be addressed by something very specific. Aspirin is not going to get it done.
That's right.
And so we need people to speak to a specific issue and not be ashamed to address this particular community because you happen to be of the same color of that community.
But there seems, as the young people have this campaign, no snitching,
right.
There seems to be a campaign of no snitching towards President Obama. Because soon as you say something about President Obama, it's like you're not black enough, or you're not patriotic, or whatever. You're like a negative person within the community.
Well, you know what it is? The problem is there's been such a negative response from the other side with President Obama that we look at him and we recognize him as a brother, and we want to be supportive of the brother. But being supportive of him as a brother still doesn't deal with the issue of him being supportive of me as my president. And so therefore there's a legitimacy to being able to criticize him as president of the United States and stuff. But you don't want to be seen as being part of all of that chorus of other people that are bringing him down. There's a difference between criticizing somebody and trying to destroy somebody. And I think that we need to understand that, because our issues are legitimate and we need to address them.
Right. Well, to the point of the idea of why the community isn't speaking up, there was a study done about animals. Like, you could take a rabid animal, and if you shock it intermittently, so, every 5 minutes, or 5 minutes, and now 7 minutes, and then 2 minutes, And you can take a rabid animal, like a violent animal, and turn it docile to the point where it just doesn't do anything because it's just waiting for the next one. And that really speaks to the idea, like when I was talking to my students about why do you feel that like you've not participated, because some of my students are 20 years old trying to get their high school diploma. Why do you not engage with the system? Why do you not pay attention to this? It's like, man, anytime I do something, nothing's ever worked. Any person, any adult that's ever come around me has always left. So to me, it broke my heart because it's just like that gets to the core of the idea that you can't get anywhere because you have a bunch of half-stepping Negroes all saying like, you know, nudge, nudge, nod, wink, wink, so on and so forth, versus the idea, I don't care who's president, we have these demands for our community. Just like the conservatives who lost still are demanding that, like, I don't want any raises and taxes,
right.
I don't want this, I don't want that.
Right.
And like, you know, and when people say, people have said over and over again, like, well, you know, he's just the president, he can't do much, or like, you know, he's the president of everybody. And I'm just like, really? If Romney had got in, Romney would have done exactly what the conservatives wanted him to do. So then you have to ask the question, are we looking at what's good for the black community, for a working class community, or are we looking what's good to have the optics of brown faces in high places?
Well, see, the thing that's interesting about your statement is what's good for the black community is good for America.
Totally true.
That's right.
So there is no difference.
Well, you know how they use the cliche, a rising tide lifts all ships.
Right.
So, but if you start at the middle class,
Right.
then, you know, what about the people that are living in poverty? And now with, you know, with the foreclosures and unemployment, that the middle class is slowly sinking into, you know, the poor class, the lower class. So, you know, so if, again, if you do focus on poverty, then you would be lifting everybody up, but they're leaving people that are in poverty, you know, and we're just staying in poverty.
But the idea of the rising tide lifts all boats, I love that because I always say that, well, here's also the deal. If you have a yacht and the water rises, you get to sail away. If you're sitting in a dinghy and the water rises, you're just in more trouble. So the way that we have, once we got to the point of, as a society, whatever the ethnicity, once we got to the point in the society when we could have a jobless recovery, we were already out. Because if you have a jobless recovery, I grew up in Belmar, New Jersey, a basically working class, middle class town, and 98% white, or at least it was when I grew up.
Okay.
The point is, they're struggling there. You know, they're struggling there. Now, after Sandy, you know, every place where I grew up was destroyed. You know, and they're fighting for the same things. And now, the funny thing is that now the libertarians are kind of put in the place of when everybody said, well, the government is evil and so on. It's like, all right, so now
you need the government to get involved.
Are you going to make that call to FEMA, or
Right.
are you going to try to get some government money to replace your house? Or are you going to say,
Right.
as Ayn Rand said, that
You're on your own.
you're a moocher on your own, except for she even got government funds behind
Right.
the scenes.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. You know, one of the things about when you talk about poverty, that nobody doesn't even talk about, right? People don't realize in New York City, one of the richest cities in the world, that the poverty level increased.
Right.
That's
There are
right.
more poor people in New York City than there ever was.
That's right.
And where's the accountability to deal with that particular issue with this particular mayor?